Professor Lewis, you mentioned that you have been accused of being an Orientalist. What do you say to that?
Well, if you permit me, I will approach this historically. It's the only way that I know. The term Orientalist came into use among European scholars when they started to study Arabic and later other classical Oriental languages using the philological technique and method that they had perfected for the study of Latin and Greek. It arises from the scholarship of the Renaissance, the meticulous scientific, I think one may use that word, study of Latin and Greek texts. The methods that they evolved, they then applied first to the Hebrew text of the Old Testament, and then to other Oriental languages, first Arabic, later Persian, Sanskrit, and others. The word Orientalist was originally used in precisely the same way that the words Latinist and Hellenist were used, to indicate a form of scholarship and to indicate the particular area or culture with which this group of scholars concerned. That remained the normal, indeed, almost the only use of the term until quite recently. There was one other use. It was used to designate a school of European painters, mostly French, some Italian, who painted scenes from a mostly imaginary Orient. And this is known as the Orientalist painting. I don't know of any connection between the two. Certainly the painters concerned were not Orientalist scholars. The Orientalist literature goes back quite a long way. It goes back almost as far as printing in Europe, and in a sense even further. European scholars, uniquely in human history, were interested in other civilizations. This doesn't happen otherwise. The Chinese civilization in its great age never showed the slightest interest in any other part of Asia. The same is true of ancient India. The same is true of the Greeks and Romans. The Greeks had a little interest, but not very much. The same is true of classical Islam in its great age. They ruled Spain, or parts of Spain, for 800 years and never had the interest to learn Latin or Spanish. The Turks ruled parts of southeastern Europe for half a millennium and never showed the slightest interest in the languages or cultures of those countries. It was they who were being normal, Europe that was being abnormal in this desire to learn about other civilizations. And obviously those who don't share that kind of curiosity have difficulty in understanding it and attribute to it base motives. If I may quote the immortal Dr. Johnson, writing in the 18th century, he says, "There is no topic," I'm quoting from memory so it may not be verbatim, but I think the thrust will be correct. "There is no subject on which human curiosity is more usefully or more agreeably exercised than in studying the laws and customs of alien nations." And then some years later, he added a second clause. He said, "The only two that are worth studying are Christendom and Islam. All the rest are hopeless barbarians." That showed his limitations. But it's interesting that already in the 18th century, he was willing to include Islam on a par with Christendom. The term Orientalist was used in that sense until the mid-50s, when it was attacked from two sides. On the one hand, it was attacked by the Orientalists, who felt that this term was no longer adequate and could be misleading. It was felt that the term Orientalist is too vague. One, in that it doesn't indicate the place. Everything from Morocco to Japan could come under it. And two, that it doesn't indicate the discipline. It brings together historians, linguists, literary scholars, philologists, and you name it. And therefore, at the International Congress of Orientalists, which met in Paris in 57, I think it was, the term Orientalist was formally abolished. And the International Organization of Orientalists, on its 100th anniversary, renamed itself Organization of the Human Sciences with special reference to Asia and Africa. A loss in brevity, but a gain in accuracy. And the term Orientalist was consigned to the garbage heap. But you know, garbage heaps are not safe places. There are people who go rummaging in them, looking for things that they can use. And there's no need for me to go into details. But there were other persons who found this term and decided they could give it another value, a much more negative one, indicating not an intelligent curiosity in other civilizations, but a kind of predatory design on other civilizations. So that, for example, let me try to choose a carefully neutral example. The literature and history of the Eskimos is the exclusive property of the Eskimos, and for anyone else to study it is an intrusion and an invasion.